Let's talk a little bit about Nick Castellanos. We were talking about, after his divorce from the Phillies, the Padres landed him, and you wrote in your article, the Padres were elated to land a, quote, baller like Nick Castellanos. What was your read on this and him fitting into that clubhouse? Because as a lot of people have talked about, with personalities like Manny Machado or Fernando Tatis, that seems like a clubhouse he might fit into.
Yeah, well, he and Manny grew up together. I mean, since 9 years old, played against each other, youth tournaments, everything else. So they know each other well. Being born and raised in Miami. AJ Preller did a lot of research. He talked to coaches who had him, players that played with him, and say, you know what, perfect. You get a freebie. Like Manny Machado said, pennies on the dollar. So it's a no risk thing. They didn't know about the beer incident. But, like Eric and AJ said, no big deal. I remember back in the day covering the Royals, the guy was pitching no-hitter, and he cracked open a couple of beers on the bench. It's not that big a deal. So I think they thought things got way overblown in Philadelphia. This gives him a fresh start. And he's excited.
And it's definitely first base because this team's configuration, he's not playing right field. He's definitely not getting in even the fourth outfielder. So first base is a position that, like you said, it's not even really – if he doesn't do well, they can cut him, and they're not on the hook for anything.
Right. They just brought in Ty France this morning. So I think they're going to play him left field. I think he's going to see a lot of DH. So I agree. I mean, Tatis, plays a lot. So it's not like he's going to be needed in right field. Maybe once every few weeks, something like that. But I think the big thing would be more DH than anything else.
That makes sense, Bob, on this team. They need a first baseman, right? They need a first baseman. The outfield's stacked. DH can be covered with Sheets or whoever they want to use it for. I like this move for the Padres. It's a no-lose situation. If he stinks, they're like, look, you can always release him and have him move on and try something else, right? So, I mean, listen, I know this. As somebody that's had things said about me in the past, when you go to a new team, you go and you say, okay, what did people say about me? Okay, well, maybe this, whatever. And you look yourself in the mirror and say, maybe this is true, maybe it's not. But then you go, and at least for 1 year, Nick Castellanos is going to be on his best behavior, I would think. And not that he's a bad guy anyways. He just says what he means. He's honest with people, and people don't like honesty, Bob. Trust me, I know that, right? He's honest. He tells people where they stand. He tells people what they think. And everybody in today's game world, however you want to put it, wants to be told you're the best. You're the best. Nobody wants to hear that, hey, you know what? You're not very good at that. Work on it. So I like this. I think it stirs up the clubhouse a little bit, especially if Manny's on board. Because one of the things that and I know from being around San Diego a little bit is you need Manny on board to make things work with the Padres.
Yeah, it's certainly his clubhouse. He's got to be on board. We all know about the Soto things with him and Manny and Tatis, that sort of thing. But yeah, I think Manning's excited, Tatis excited. And, look, we didn't hear any of these things going on in Philadelphia. If things were that bad with the Phillies, they could trade him or release him during the season. So, things kind of got blown up, I think, big time once he left. How many times we hear that when players leave and managers get fired, we hear things, it should have been said at the time, not now when he's gone.
One of the things people need to understand is that Nick got to choose this. Nick didn't get placed on the Padres, or the Padres didn't offer more money. I think people really understand that part of it. Was this Nick's best option of a team that was good? Have you heard or talked to Nick or talked to anybody else of the other options that he had?
He said he talked to a couple other teams there. I can't say who it was, but I think the Padres are so aggressive. AJ Preller yesterday said that he was talking with Dave Dombrowski since November, just never lined up on a trade. And I think the thing was, I'm sure he thought, you know what, we know he's not going back to Philadelphia. Will someone trade for him? We're going to gamble that he gets released. Got released, and they pounced on it. He was released on Thursday. They were in a conference call, Friday morning. And then, boom, flying right out to Arizona. So I think it was a natural fit, probably from last month or two.
Nobody can deny that AJ Preller wants to win. Is this season or the coming seasons, if the extension and everything, all that stuff for him happens, is this his fault if they lose? Ultimately, it's the players. But is it his fault if they win also because of what's been written about him, about how he butts heads? He's been through a lot of managers, and they haven't gotten to the place where this roster should be, which is a World Series.
Yeah, I mean, not too many GMs. So I'm not sure if I can think of one that survived that many manager changes. What I think he's on is fourth or fifth manager. That usually doesn't happen. Usually get two, and that's it. They've been knocking the door. Obviously, they sell out most of the games, so financially they're doing well at the gate. It's not his fault. The TV money kind of went away in San Diego. They should have knocked off the Dodgers 2 years ago, 2-1 in the best-of-5 series. Dodgers had a bullpen game, no Freddie Freeman, and blew them out. And then, of course, won Game 5, 2-0, even though Darvish pitched so well. So they're knocking the door. They're in the playoffs. They spent a lot of money. I mean, when Peter Sadler was alive, it was almost like the George Steinbrenner days, get whoever you want. I mean, the only reason they got Xander Bogaerts, who got $280 million, is they were offering over $350 million for Trey Turner. And they were willing to go over $400 million, even more, for Aaron Judge, but he wanted to go back to the Yankees. So they spent a lot of money. Now they're kind of, up against it. So I think a year from now, it'll be fascinating to see what big contract has to go. And the one guy everybody talks about is Tatis, because his contract is certainly tradable.
All right, Bob, let's transition to the Twins a little bit. We've heard a lot about this Byron Buxton thing, how he was upset, with the Twins for basically not declaring their loyalty to him because he felt that he did that for them, when he told the media in the offseason and during the season last year that he wasn't going anywhere. He was a little upset that the Twins didn't come out and say, yeah, we want him to stay here, like blatantly, right? They said that they were hoping he would. But in my mind, I'm thinking, isn't that understandable that the Twins didn't come out and say that? Because, everybody's on the table and they'll listen to offers from other teams. What was your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, nowadays it seems like, players are more sensitive to that sort of thing. I mean, they had to apologize to Ketel Marte in Arizona for listening to offers. But Buxton had a no trade clause. He was just upset that the Twins didn't say, hey, we're not moving you under any reason. No circumstance will change that. So he was upset by that. And there were teams that were telling him to, hey, waive your trade clause to the Dodgers, waive your trade clause here. We'll take you in a hurry. But he loves Minnesota. He should get rewarded for that. But I remember when Kevin Towers was the GM of the San Diego Padres, and he would tell teams, hey, you want to make an offer for Tony Gwynn? You want to make an offer for Trevor Hoffman? Go ahead. I don't think there's any way we'll move them. But if something blows us away, we'll sure think about it. So a lot of GMs will say, you know what? We'll listen to everybody. And maybe that's what the Twins were thinking too. Like, hey, if somebody blows us away from Buxton, let's see if he wants to leave.
But Bob, why does it matter? He's Byron Buxton. He has a no trade clause. Who cares if they say they're I don't understand why we're mad. Byron Buxton's a great player, but why are we mad? You have a full no trade. Guess what, Byron? If you don't ever waive it, you're a Twin for life. So why does the team have to come out and say, we're not going to trade him? Before they even trade you, they'll have to do what they had to do to Nolan Arenado. Hey, Nolan, will you go here? No, I don't want to go there. Okay, will you go here? No, I don't. I'm going to stay here in Minnesota. And he has that right until the end of time, unless they release him and eat the money, which the way the Twins are going, they need to save every penny, Bob. So tell your son not to get a pretzel at the concession stand or anything because they might charge him double, okay? Mm-hmm. But you see what I'm saying? He has I don't understand why this is a thing. They didn't say to me that I'm not getting traded. Byron, you have the power. You'll never be traded if you don't want to be traded. You can sit right there in Minnesota, fish out on Minnetonka, right? Go to Maynard's, go to wherever you want in Minneapolis and have a great time, and you can be a Twin for life, buddy.
I just think players now just want that kind of support. They want the Twins, like you said, even though he has the power, they want the Twins to come out and say, no, there's no way in the world we'll ever trade you. We love you. I think just players want that. I mean, look at Philadelphia. When Dave Dombrowski, talked about Bryce Harper, so hopefully become an elite player again. Didn't think it was any big deal. Sort of that kind of stuff went on forever. But obviously it bothered Harper, and he still talked about it extensively yesterday. So I just think it's a different, time in life for players. So a lot different from when, you played AJ and Eric too. Nobody worried about those things. But now I think just everybody's, very sensitive.
Let's take both of those stories, and I want your resolution of both of those stories. Buxton saying what he said, and I agree with AJ. It's kind of like whatever, like it's totally fine. You have all the power. And Bryce Harper being called not elite. Is this the first stepping stone to maybe a time when Byron Buxton changes his mind and says, you know what, I'll play after this season. He has 2 more years. I'll go play somewhere that wants to win. And is there something that could possibly come of the Bryce Harper, rift or tiff that's going on?
Yeah, I mean, Harper still, remember he won an extension years ago, and they said, come on, you signed that contract. You didn't want the opt-out clause, so nothing really came about it. I still don't think Harper leaving there. I still think he's the, face of the franchise. Obviously, with Kyle Schwarber, so beloved there. And I think he likes playing Philadelphia, too. He loves that intensity. Remember when both of them were free agents, both Harper and Machado? I think it worked out perfectly. I think Harper would have been bored out of his mind in San Diego, and I'm not sure Machado would have loved playing in Philadelphia. So it worked out great. Buxton, on the other hand, all you got to do is look at both, Texas and Mets trade. Brandon Nimmo had a no-trade clause, too. Obviously, something set him off where you say, you know what, I want to go. Salmon didn't have a no-trade clause those 2 places, but he was, perfectly willing to go to New York. So it could be a case here, too, where if he gets a little disgruntled, he can say, you know what, I'm from Atlanta. If Atlanta wants me, I'd love to go there. Keep it quiet, but that will leave. I mean, the Carlos Correa had no trade clause too, but it wasn't until Houston came out and said, wait a minute now, what's going to happen here? He wasn't even thinking about leaving at all. And when they presented it to him, he jumped at the opportunity.
All right, Bob, let's talk about where you're at right now. You're obviously at the Angels camp, and we've heard a lot about Mike Trout in the news a lot recently, whether it's talking about center field, whether it's talking about the WBC. What's the latest with Mike Trout that you're hearing from Angels camp?
Well, he met with the Perry Manesian, the GM, and also with the Kurt Suzuki, the new manager, and said, I want to go back to center field. And they said, okay, let's work that out. So he plans to play center field now for 4 or 5 days a week. He was bored as a DH. They said he was taking thousands of swings during the game. He hated being a DH, and he had the worst year of his career. His best year was 2022 when he played center field for about 120 games. So they're going to try it. He feels healthy, so he's going to be back in center field. WBC, he says he badly wanted to do it, but the insurance was a hang-up. Is very disappointed. He loved being there in 2023. He kind of takes pride that so many guys want to do it now because they had so much fun in 2023. But, insurance reasons stopped it. And he wasn't going to be, the everyday, outfielder anyway, with that as loaded as that team is, but he certainly wanted to be on it.
Bob, how good can the Angels be? I mean, they're kind of in a tough spot, right? With the Astros, the Mariners, the Rangers should be better this year. What can the Angels be in this division? I know they've tried to make some moves. Some of their young guys have gotten to take another year, another step. But can the Angels actually compete this year in that AL West, which has been good and continues to get better?
I think it moved closer to 500. I don't think they can contend for the division. Their payroll is still pretty low. They got rid of the Rendon contract, but it's not like they spent that money. Rendon contract is now deferred. But I think their payroll is only about $148 million. So well before the luxury tax threshold. So I just don't think they want to spend money yet because they don't think they're ready to contend. So I think, they're making some slow progress, things like that. But I just can't see them being a true contender and challenging Seattle Mariners or Houston Astros or even Texas for that matter.